Hello and welcome to episode number 54 of the Classical Guitar Composers Podcast. As always, perhaps less frequently, but still always, I am your host, Chris Hales. Glad to be joining you for another edition of the show that features original classical guitar compositions from around the globe, as well as discussing a wide range of topics both relating and not relating to the classical guitar. Now here's the problem with doing less frequent podcasts, is that I get these emails and, you know, they're a little bit old by the time I read them on the podcast, but nonetheless, you just have to think of this show in terms of episode by episode, I guess, and not so much current events. But we're going to start on a somewhat somber note today because I got this email at this point, you know, like a month and a half ago from Martin Slater, but says, Chris, heard today via Carlos Bonell that Armand Coeck passed away this 9th of February at age 84. Funny thing, we were just talking about him, Martin. And that is true. So in the previous episode, I did a couple minutes talking about Armand Coeck, and just very shortly after that episode aired, the great composer passed away. And it's interesting timing. For one, we were talking about him, but I also went ahead and dug out the sheet music that I had, and I had talked about a piece I really liked by him, but I couldn't remember everything about it last time, and I think I had said it was in 7/8 or something like that. The piece is Danza India. It's not in 7/8. It's just it's in 4/4, but he'd metered it like in groups, so it's like 3, 3, and 2, which I think is a little strange. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't just, you know, I guess maybe we might think rhythmically differently. You can come to the same rhythm, but kind of think of it differently. To me, that's just, you know, accenting, you know, certain beats, or off beats rather, you know, like some syncopation. Anyway, but it's a really cool piece. So I've actually been, I pulled it out and started playing through it and decided to start working on it. So that's pretty fun. I'm working on this really neat little piece by Coeck, and then, so there's stuff by him I don't know, you know, I mean, he's written a lot of music, and I'm only familiar with a handful, but so when Martin sent that email, I started looking more into him, and I guess he has a really famous piece called Constellation, which I was unfamiliar with, but apparently is one of his more well-known works, and I listened to it, and I loved it. I was totally unfamiliar with that piece just a few weeks ago. So I've started looking for the sheet music, and it's not the easiest sheet music to get a hold of. Maybe if you are closer. I mean, there's one company that they sell a publication of it, but it's overseas for me. I'd have to order it from overseas. I'm always a little hesitant to do that. But that may be the direction I go, because someone has also like transcribed it into MuseScore and put that up, but there's no fingerings or any of the direction, you know, and I think you lose a lot. Sometimes that's fine, especially with older stuff, but a lot of stuff that was written by guitarists themselves, those can be pretty important. Now, being 84 years old, it's too bad, sad to hear, but, you know, sounds like he had a good run. But it is interesting, we were just talking about him. But if you're unfamiliar with him, or would like to become more familiar with him, I think that's a good idea, because he's a good composer and guitar player, and I think he does a very good job at composing guitar music that takes advantage of what the guitar can do, and, you know, he's also aware of what the guitar can't do, which is always nice to have in a composer. But a composer that can really utilize the strengths of a guitar is something that's what we're all striving for. Myself, and I'm sure most of you listening to some degree, are interested in guitar composition. If anyone knows of a way to get that's, in the States, something a little closer, or even digital's fine. I mean, I prefer hard copy, but that's, fully fleshed out with fingerings and, directions on articulation, all that stuff. So I would be very interested in obtaining that piece. I'm also I'm reworking a piece that I played years ago that I think is somewhat the opposite of like what I was just talking about. It's called Batucada by Savio, Isaias Savio is what I'm going to go with. And it's it's such a cool piece if you're not familiar with that one. Really cool, really hopping piece. Has a fantastic bass line going on through it. However, that piece is so stinking hard, and I'm pretty sure he's a guitar player. I mean, this is not written by someone who doesn't know the guitar, but it demands certain things that just, to me, seem very unnatural and very cumbersome to do. And some of them I just go, why? But, it's maybe just maybe have to do with my background of playing. I'm just not as used to this kind of thing, but it just has these like wild jumps for your fourth finger with no time to get it there, from note to note. And everything in it is playable, isolated. There's nothing that's like out of reach, but it's how you get from one to the next. It's the kind of thing that if somebody handed me, who was a composer, and said, hey, play this, I would give it back with some, red annotations. Or suggestions rather. It'd be a little bit colorful in saying, I think here's an easier way you could do this. So, but either way, it's such a cool piece that it's kind of worth the effort to me. So I've brought that one back, and I've been trying to work it back up to tempo. Got the Coeck piece going, and still messing around with this Morel piece I started quite a while ago. That's the thing these days, it's like when you practice a piece every day, it goes a lot, you progress through it a lot faster than once a week, which, I'm probably practicing 3-4 days a week, but, only one piece per practice. So it's, that's better than nothing. I actually feel like I'm doing pretty good, but it does result in just staying on like a piece for a really long time. And that piece, like I'll have it pretty well memorized and pretty well up to tempo, almost to where I would be comfortable performing it. And then life gets in the way and I put the guitar down for 3 weeks, and then it's just, stepping back and working it up again. Anyway, that's what I'm working on. Music wise, not doing any composition. Been kind of messing around with some arrangements more lately. I just have not had the bug to compose. It's not just, it's sometimes, I can have like a case of writer's block or just frustration, but I maybe I shouldn't be admitting this out loud on the show, but I just haven't really had that itch to create some new music. Although there might be a tickle. Coming on. Speaking of my music, I recently discovered several errors in my Graveyard Suite. If you've purchased the Graveyard Suite from me, there's a few errors in the final movement, and if you want to just email me, I'd be happy to send you the corrected pages. I've got a corrected PDF document now, so sorry. Yeah, I don't know what more to say about that. Quality control, is just me. And yeah, well, sometimes things get by. I would also say thank you very much if you have purchased that. And if you are interested in purchasing some of my music, you can do so. You just go to the Classical Guitar Composers website, classicalguitarcomposers.com, and click on the sheet music link. That'll take you to where you can buy a few of my pieces for sale, including the American Suite, which features the title music of this show. I have another interesting thing I've come across. So, I have a pretty amazing job, career. I've been doing this for about 13 years now. I do various jobs within this thing, but what I do is I record accompaniment tracks for musical theater. So sometimes that involves, sitting at the console recording other musicians. It involves a lot of editing on the back end. And a lot of the times it involves playing guitar, because a lot of shows call for guitar, and I'm just sort of the resident in-house guitarist. So the times I actually get to play guitar on the job are, of course, my favorite days. And I've, been able to encounter a lot of interesting guitar parts, a lot of terrible guitar parts that you kind of have to work with, guitar parts that were written by keyboardists. But did a show recently that was orchestrated by the guitar player. He was at least one of the orchestrators on it, and has a very unique style. It's like acoustic finger picking stuff, but it called for prepared guitar. Now, if you're familiar with like prepared piano, as hesitant as I am to bring it up, if you're familiar with John Cage, or in other words, he of whom we don't speak of on this show, he wrote these prepared piano pieces where he like stuck stuff into the piano to give it interesting sounds. This utilized that idea with guitar, and using some different kind of things to create mutes, or like some cool stuff with wires, stuff I've never tried before, but I loved some of this prepared guitar stuff. It was really fun, came up with some cool sounds, and I ended up ordering like a whole roll of this wire because I was having fun with it. But so this was all steel string stuff. I did not there was nothing that called for classical guitar in this, and I have not tried any of that on the classical guitar. I don't know how it would sound, but I'm gonna have to try it, and I guess it's possible that I could end up writing a prepared classical guitar piece borrowing from this guy's ideas. So it's interesting stuff. I've never encountered that one before. The result of the wire, it involves running a wire through the strings down by the bridge. Was the main one I'm talking about. There's other things too, and it's a certain type of wire, but it gives it this. It almost makes the guitar sound like a thumb piano or kalimba. Very cool. Sorry, about these beeps. I'm gonna have to silence my phone because apparently I'm Mr. Popular right now. Anyway, I thought maybe y'all would find that of interest. So let's go ahead and move on to emails. I think I'll keep the show fairly short today and not ramble on about too many things in life. Haven't seen any cool new horror movies lately. I don't think they make them anymore. I guess I did see they've got a new Omen coming out. The Omen is one of my favorite movies, but this new thing, I don't know. Doesn't look very interesting to me. I'm finding myself less and less interested in watching movies anyway. I just don't think... I mean, I went to the new Dune, and it was okay. I like 90% of it I really liked, but then, a few things I wasn't thrilled about. I just would rather they just do the book, but, it was fine. But I'm like, I don't remember the last movie I've been to where I was like anxious to see it again. Maybe like Halloween, when they re-put out then when they did the new Halloweens, the one in 2018. The first one was great, and then they made two terrible ones after that. I hear they're making a new Aliens. I've just lost all optimism. I used to be like a really big Star Wars fan, kinda. Well, yeah, I mean, I was. I used to, as many people were, or are, or whatever. But I really like the old movies. I actually have like like this guy like recreated the original versions of the movies without all the changes, and I have those. But I didn't really care for prequels, and I at first was really excited when they started coming out with new Star Wars movies a few years ago. And I actually even kind of liked them at first, but then like watched them again and I was like, these are terrible. These are stupid. And I mean, is it me? Am I just losing interest in movies, or are movies just like stupid now? I think it's that. I don't think it's me. Now, did I ever talk about Deadstream? I don't remember. You know what? If someone could let me know, did I ever talk about the movie Deadstream already on the podcast? Because if I didn't, I would like to. That one was pretty good. And it was filmed near my house at a supposedly haunted house not far from where I grew up. Please let me know if I've already covered that or not. Because if I haven't, I will. Okay, so that's that. Let's do emails. These are always nice. This email came in February 7th, so almost 2 months ago. Like I said, just think episode to episode. This email says, "Hi, Chris. I hope this email finds you well. I wanted to take a moment to express my deepest gratitude for the Classical Guitar Composers podcast. As a budding classical guitar player and composer, your show has been a constant source of inspiration and motivation for me. The way you feature works from talented artists across the world is truly commendable. Each episode not only showcases beautiful music, but also encourages aspiring musicians like myself to keep pushing forward. Your passion for classical guitar and dedication to promoting diverse compositions is evident in every episode. The stories behind the music, the interviews with various people, and the heartfelt recordings have kept me going during moments of self-doubt. Your podcast has become my companion during late-night practice sessions and long commutes. It's like having a mentor whispering encouragement in my ear." Sorry to laugh, I just pictured me whispering into your ear as you were practicing. "I've often thought about submitting my own compositions to your show. While I'm still honing my skills, the dream of having my work featured on the Classical Guitar Composers podcast keeps me motivated. One day, when I feel confident enough, I'll take that leap and share my music with you and your listeners. Thank you once again for creating a platform that celebrates the beauty of classical guitar music. Keep up the fantastic work, and know that your efforts are making a difference in the lives of aspiring artists worldwide. Warm regards, Chris Dixon from Ohio, a father of 3 who is just trying to get by and enjoy some music along the way." Oh man, and thank you so much, Chris. This email truly warms my heart, because it is nice to know that this show really does mean something to somebody. It makes it worth the effort, and I'm just so glad to hear it. And it's a very lovely description you put there. I think I'd love to just snip some of your sentences out of that and put it into it would make a really well crafted description of the show. That would probably sound a lot better than the one I put out. But I really appreciate that. And I too am a father of 3, just trying to get by and enjoy some music along the way. I understand exactly what you mean, and I'm glad this show helps, so thank you so much. Oh, and anytime, I'd love to hear your music. It is a little scary to put it out there in the world. I totally understand that, but I also think that we're probably our own harshest critic, and I tell you, I've gotten a lot of emails over the years doing this show. I've never got one that said, "Hey, that piece was terrible." The listeners of this show are very supportive and truly like hearing these different compositions. The only negative emails I've ever gotten are ones that they're not happy with me or something I said, but I don't think I've ever received one where someone was disparaging someone else's composition, and that's really cool. You guys are really awesome, positive people, which, not to sound like a hippie or nothing, but, we could maybe use a little more of that in the world. So whenever you're ready, I'll be happy to feature some music. Okay, and I'm always excited to hear from my friend Martin Slater from across the pond. If you've been listening to this show for any length of time, you've probably become familiar with Martin. And Martin says I don't have to read his whole emails because he always has a lot to say, but you know what? I like to. So I'm going to. And if any of this email seems maybe like there's something weird going on with the timeline, he sent me the notice about the death of Armand Coeck after this email. It was like a week after this email came in. Martin says, Chris, I've just gotten around to listening to the latest podcast, and no, I haven't heard myself since episode 18. Regarding the Zoom meeting with Carlos, the first attempt failed as he could only hear voice, no matter how much we adjusted the Zoom settings. As my brother-in-law, who is very techie, was currently with Mum and my sister, yes, I had a full 4 days break. I asked him if he had any ideas, but, as it turned out, only expertise in Windows and not Macs. So, okay, it was down to Muggins to try and engage his brain. Back at home, I again plugged my fancy USB mic via the Essential multi-port and went into my Mac settings. Here I found a symbol for sound and actually found that my mic was showing as an alternative audio device. Now that was all well and good, but would it make any difference? Carlos kindly Zoomed me individually to test this, and to both our delights, my playing was now perfectly audible to him. This eventuality also confirmed that my mic actually works, something I could not otherwise ascertain. The result was that I was able to play successfully during the next Zoom meeting, which I have since discovered happened every Monday evening at UK time 6:30 p.m. Whatever time that is for you, I'm not sure, but folk can register to listen for free, so there you go. I think that would be like 10:30 in the morning for me. I have said that I will probably pay to play once a month. He does email his thoughts on the performance. Almost inevitably, my left hand became a little wooden in places, but I gradually thawed out. What I actually played was Barrios' Villancico de Navidad, Ponce's Prelude in F sharp minor. That's Ponce's number 8, Segovia's number 1. Plus my Prelude number 7, Tone Picture number 5, Hazy Summer, which you just played, and Country Dance number 5, Jolly Jack. By the time I got to the last piece, everything was working perfectly, of course. Needless to say, I will let you know when I plan to play again, so that you will at least have the opportunity to hear me live, for better or worse. Zoomed Guitars Live is the title. I probably won't play the Barrios again straight away, but do intend to make my performance of the Ponce smoother, as I like the piece. I will probably now try and work through the 12 preludes Segovia chose to publish, as I believe they are not often enough played. Indeed, I actually performed the Barrios, Ponce, and my Prelude number 7 at my latest Guitar Society meeting. The most notable aspect of this was that I performed it entirely from memory, something that I have never done before. I didn't even bother with a music stand. I was far less nervous doing this than on the Zoom. The next significant thing on the agenda is finally working out which of the music programs I have access to will actually produce decent recordings. After all, I do now know that my mic works. On the domestic front, Mum seems to have settled into a decent level of contentment, despite being disappointed every time I have to leave. Despite her age, we are actually investigating a replacement of her bad knee. I'm sure she's strong enough, and it would actually improve her quality of life. She's even on a waiting list for laser treatment to improve the sight in her one good eye, although the wait is probably 1 year. Regarding my running, I finally got out to do a 10-miler on Thursday the 1st of February, immediately followed by my 45-minute fitness session. Needless to say, I didn't get up too quick this morning. I had to do something, as I've got a 10-miler on the Isle of Wight just over the water from Southampton this Sunday, and a 20-miler next Sunday, which I will do my best to survive. End of essay. I don't expect to be graded for it. Martin. Martin, that's you get an A. You get an A. By now you will have run all those. I hope you're doing okay. That sounds brutal. A 20-miler. That's incredible. So, and this is very encouraging. I know you've been trying to figure out a way to record for some time now, so that's great that the mic is working. And figuring out which program. I mean, the one I use, I know, but I know there's cheaper versions than what I use, and there's a learning curve for all of them. But what's nice these days is there's usually a YouTube tutorial for everything. That's where I've kind of learned how to do everything when I run into it. But Martin, if you do have any questions that I could answer, I'm a little better with that stuff than when you started emailing me some time ago. And I particularly know what I'm doing with Macs and not Windows, so you're certainly welcome to ask any questions. And I'd love to be able to tune in for that Zoomed Guitar Live. Yeah, let me know. I mean, it's likely at a time I'll be at work, 10:30 on a Monday morning, but, if there's some chance that I'm working on non-audio stuff, I'd love to tune into that. That sounds awesome. That's quite, so you kind of threw down an entire recital, it sounds like, for that performance for Carlos, which is very cool. And then doing all that from memory. When I was, and not to say that I'm old, because I'm not, but when I was younger than I am now, I played stuff from memory a lot easier than I do now. I'm finding it a little bit harder. It makes me sad because I still can't memorize a piece, but it's just not as easy as it used to be. And honestly, that probably has a lot less to do with age than it does just based on how much I practice. And maybe the time of day I practice. Because when I do practice, it's at like 5:30 in the morning. So, I mean, how well do you remember 5:30 in the morning? I'm glad to hear about your mom, Martin, too, doing better. And if you go with the knee surgery, I hope that works out. I think they probably can do something there. A lot of people get that knee surgery and seem to do a lot better. All right, with that, I think we ought to go on to some music. So let me do what I can here. This is a little, I think I've got a little bit of a language barrier in communication here with this composer. And at first, someone sent me an email on behalf of the composer, and I emailed back saying, you got to send your own music on this show. I just wanted to make sure somebody wasn't just like, hey, I like this guy, why don't you play this music, But that wasn't the case. I guess it's like this guy's publicist or something. So let me see what I have in the email here. This says, Dear, we would like to share with you Javier Contreras' latest album, Suites Latino Americanas for Guitar. This album gathers 3 suites composed by Javier Contreras himself, Suite Peruana, Suite Argentina, and Suite Colombiana, and 1 suite commissioned for this work by the Chilean composer Karina Contreras, Suite Patagonica. Based on traditional rhythms of folklore of our continent, developed with classical composition techniques and performed with the virtuosity and expressiveness that characterizes Javier Contreras. I invite you to visit the artist's website, javiercontrerasmusic.com, where you can take note of the relevance of the artist and the contribution he has been making during the last 20 years. We hope that this work will be of interest to you and can be broadcast in your program or on your platform. We look forward to seeing your comments. So, I gather that this is not a listener submission, but we'll take it. He did confirm that this was on his behalf, and so I'm going to go ahead and play one of the suites composed by Javier himself. And let's go ahead and go with the Peruvian suite. And Javier gave me some background on these. The Peruvian suite. This was written in 2015 and is dedicated to the outstanding Chilean concert pianist Emerson Salazar, currently living in Germany. From the abundant rhythmic richness of Peruvian music, Javier took as main resources of rhythmic composition those more traditional dances of the coastal area of Peru. Let's remember that the best-known musics of that country are the Andean music and the coastal music. From the latter, Javier takes the rhythmic bass of 3 of the 4 movements of his suite Peruana. This work was winner of the Boston Guitar Fest composition contest in Boston, USA. And, I'm going to just slaughter the names of these movements, so I'm not going to try to say them, but you can read about them on his website. And so the first movement, I'll just give you this description of each movement. The first movement says, "This piece is inspired by the extraordinary popular guitarist Alvaro Lagos Ramos, emblematic accompanying guitarist of the famous Lima singer-songwriter Chabuca Granda. It begins with a first section in medium tempo and always responding to the rhythmic impulse of the londo to enter an intermediate section with a very expressive melodic lyric and greater air. The second movement, this is a slow medium tempo movement with a perpetual legatissimo movement that demands the performer's ability to sustain the demanding continuity of the work while projecting the tranquility and evocative spirit characteristic of this introspective and profound dance. The third movement, invocation. This londo is closer to the traditional londo of the Peruvian coast, including its traditional pizzicato, recurrent in the accompaniments of the popular guitarists of Peru. One night, Javier tells of having dreamt of this piece, and that morning he quickly wrote it down. Fourth movement. This movement faithfully rescues the vertiginous spirit of the very interesting festejo dance, one of Javier's favorite Latin American rhythms, who has written 3 festejos in total. This piece is very dynamic at all levels, a demanding piece, but very attractive in rhythm and color. So here it is. This is the Peruvian Suite by Javier Contreras. Okay, and there it is. That was the Peruvian Suite by Javier Contreras. Thanks, Javier. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. You know, when I started this show, I said I'm just going to pronounce things phonetically because I get music sent in from all over the world, and I had just decided from day one that I will do my best with pronunciation, but when in doubt, just speak phonetically. But the music is a language we can all understand, and we have heard music today. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. Thank you again to Javier Contreras for submitting music for this episode. You can find more from Javier Contreras at javiercontrerasmusic.com. And if you're unsure how to spell that, well, I'll go ahead and put a link on the Classical Guitar Composers website, classicalguitarcomposers.com. And with that, we'll call it a show. I'll see you next time, and until then, keep on plucking.